Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay. I was just sorting out some an instance of user misoperation, shall we say. Good evening. I was going to do some punchcraft this evening, but I didn't have enough time to prepare for the stream, and I was kind of rushing it a little bit, or rushing it a lot to try and get it ready, and I just said, you know what, that's silly, I'll make a mess of it if I do that. So I'm just going to do something else for tonight, and then I'll prepare the punchcraft and I'll start that tomorrow. But in the meantime, so to fill in the stream tonight, what I'm going to do is do some jewellery using chainmail rings or chainmail techniques, and take it from there. So what I'm actually about to want to do, or one of the things I want to do, is this is a bracelet, but it's a little bit too stiff for a bracelet. So what I want to do is turn it into a necklace, which means extending this out to about 16.5, 17 inches from what it currently is, which I think is about 7.5. Oh no, actually it's at 9 inches. Yeah, it's a 9-inch bracelet at the moment, so I need to add about another 7 inches to it, at least, maybe 8 inches. So I'm going to do that this evening. So first of all, I need to remember what I was making this out of. In terms of ring sizes, or what I made it out of, should I say. Now then, it's either those or those. I don't think it's them. They look a bit too big. Yes, they are. So it's these. No, I might not have enough. I shall do what I can. And then the pink rings that I was using, maybe these. They look about right. Excuse me while I just again this is I wasn't prepared for this either. But at least chainmail is something that can be done quite easily. Okay, I know it's not those because they're a pale pink and they're not quite they're not the same colour. That is one thing that you get with rings, is that you don't always get the same colour twice. Yeah, they're too much of a pale one, so I've been using these and these. So I shall just put those to one side. And then I will take this clasp off the end. See if I can do it without having everything go all over the place. And I should have another pair of pliers somewhere. And it's not those. I have everything but what I want, which is typical. Well, I guess I will be doing it without using my what is my favourite pliers, but that is disappointing. I wonder where they've gone. I see where they've gone. I have a pussycat in this house. Who comes to visit the studio from time to time. And what he does, he has a habit of laying wherever he feels like it, which was right where the pliers were, so he's pushed them off the end of the desk. So, first of all, let me take this clasp off the end of here. I'll just do that by opening these two pink rings. Open it a little bit more and just slip it off. Do the same thing with this one. Now this chain is called a Helm weave chain, and I know there's an end to this ring somewhere. There it is. I will zoom the camera in a little bit as well, just make it a bit easier for you guys to see what I'm doing, because it wide angle on the camera is not fantastically good for doing this. Okay, I shall just put them over there. Zoom the camera in a little. No, we'll leave. I was trying to move things out of the way, but they'll have to stay there. They'll work as a backdrop. Okay, so what one of the nice things about, or one of the interesting things about this particular weave is that the centre ring, this one, is free floating. This one is completely free floating. That's out of focus, isn't it? There we go. I shall sit off to one side slightly. It's completely free floating. It just sits there because of the way all the rings work together, which is I find quite fascinating, really. So I'm going to need some of these pink rings opened up, and I'm going to need the blue ones, I think. Some of the blue ones open and some of the blue ones closed. So unfortunately, this is kind of the slightly less interesting part of doing chainmail, is the bit where you open and close rings. But it is a necessary part. Without this, of course, you can't weave them. So the pink rings are done in pairs, so I'll open an even number of them. I'm opening them also quite wide because they've got to go around these larger rings. And I also now have to remember how to actually do this weave, because it's a little while since I made that particular bracelet. And yeah, it's a bit like the proverbial riding the bike You don't really forget, but it sometimes takes a while just to remember the skill. So I'll do a few, and then we'll weave some, and if we need any more I'll open some more. So another one after, I think it's an odd number, so let me find another ring. Okay, and now the blue ones, which I can't get hold of for some silly reason. There we go. I need two closed, one open, if I'm correct. Fear Reaper, good evening. Yeah, I was going to do Punchcraft tonight, but it was getting quite late I'll move that light in a minute. I think it was getting quite late. In fact, it was about 8 o'clock and I still wasn't quite ready. Now either I would spend the whole stream preparing for the stream, or you know, along the lines of producing the actual Punchcraft backing material, putting the design onto it, and then mounting it in the hoop and what have you. So either I did that on stream, or it just had to spend sort of an hour preparing, if you see what I mean, and the stream would have been late. So I just thought, you know what, rather than rush, which is what I was starting to do, what I'll do is I'll just do something else for tonight, and then I can do the prepare properly hopefully tomorrow, and then do the Punchcraft tomorrow night, and then I'm not rushing things. Right, so I'm just moving a light, so hopefully you should be able to see a little bit better. So with the rings, I've got a bracelet here that I need to turn into a necklace, and so that's one thing I thought I could do, and I've got some other chains I want to make as well. So if I get this done, I can always do some other chain work. So that's why I'm back to the rings. That's 4, so I want 2 to... six. Okay. So how are you tonight, Fear Reaper? What I'm trying to do with these rings is make sure I close them up perfectly. If I close them up perfectly, you can't feel, and sometimes can't even see, the actual join between the along the ring, and that's kind of like a real nice perfect join if you can do that, and it helps. It's kind of like a strength, a slightly more stronger chain if you can close up the rings, and it looks good if you can't see the ends. That's good, taking the night off from 3D modelling. Yeah, well, it's good to have a change from time to time. I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing now. having of course just finished the scraperboard cottage last night. It's nice to do something different. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, do 2. One more set, and then we'll weave a few rings, and we'll see how far we get. I've got a feeling that I should have been opening these blue rings the other way, but we will deal with them as they are. Right. I'm now trying to remember, oh yes, right. I'm now trying to remember how to actually do this. So we start by putting blue rings on either side here. Yep. Sometimes these things can get really fiddly. So what I'm trying to do is capture 4 rings. There we go. Now, although it looks like I've missed the centre ring out of this, I'm about to put it in now. So if I remember correctly how I go about doing this. It can be a little bit fiddly. And you have to get them in the right place, otherwise it doesn't look right. There we go. Now then, I noticed one of these pink rings I've just put on didn't close properly. But of course, once you put it on, you can never. Oh, it is. It's that one. Just a slight adjustment needed. And that is, I just slipped off that ring, which scratched it. So I now need to remove this blue ring because there isn't enough space to get the pink ring out. You have to be really careful with these, not to slip off the rings. Whilst these aluminium anodized rings are quite robust, if you try and sort of squeeze them with sharp objects, shall we say, then they can be scratched. They don't tend to scratch in normal wear and tear, but the ends of these pliers, even though the jaws themselves are smooth, the ends are at a right angle, so they are quite sharp, and so you can scratch a ring if you slip off. Hello, Theme Hospital. Sorry I didn't see you for a while. Welcome. Good evening. Hello.
Maybe you need it.
You got a visitor to the studio this evening, but I don't think they'll appear on camera. So now I'll put this blue ring back. A little bit fiddly. I haven't quite developed a technique for doing this particular weave yet. Some of the other weaves I've sort of worked out how I want to do them, shall we say, and I can deal with them quite well. But this weave, which is Helm, is one I'm still practicing. Yep. Fear Reaper is doing quite well. Luckily we haven't had any real need to use his services all that much, I'm glad. So far anyway. I seem to remember one tried the other night. It wasn't fantastically successful. Can't see. I don't know what it is about them, how they seem to think that creative streams will be easy for them to troll. It kind of looks like you'd think it would be easier to put this centre ring in before I fasten up the pink rings, but there isn't actually a lot of space or a lot of spare room once this ring is in. The pink rings are fairly tightly enclosed, shall we say, or stretched. Well, no, stretched isn't quite the right word, but once you get that blue ring in the centre, there isn't a lot of space left to actually close these rings up, and so it will be immensely difficult to do. But if you put the centre ring in afterwards, it becomes a lot more simpler. Yeah, that's right, and they think it's hilarious. For some reason they also think they're able to shock me. Oh dear. But on to more pleasant subjects than internet trolls. Most of the time they aren't even worth discussing. Oh, this blue is showing up on camera. Oh, it's the purple that doesn't. Yeah. So tomorrow night's stream, if I get prepared in time. If I don't, I'm doing some more of this. But tomorrow night's stream is going to be some punchcraft. So I thought I'd do another locomotive since I quite enjoyed doing that one, and they're a nice sort of subject for punchcraft, just because of the way in which locomotives sort of are in a way. So what I'm actually going to do is a steam locomotive. The sort of the base model. The base image is of a locomotive called Mallard, which, if you're half familiar with steam locomotives, the Mallard is the one that holds the steam land speed record of about 126 miles per hour, I think, off the top of my head, or 125. And although when I finish with it, you won't particularly tell whether it's Mallard or one of the others, but it's what they call an A4 Pacific. And hopefully it should look quite good. Gresham. I am in Yorkshire, one of the largest counties in the United Kingdom. And good evening and welcome to the studio. I don't think I've seen you in the studio before, so especially welcome. Thanks for visiting. Okay, I'm trying to put these rings on using the pliers. These are big enough to do it by hand, but I'm using the pliers to try and make it a bit easier for you to see what I'm doing. Which is really just opening and closing rings, but I certainly find watching this quite fascinating, and I find it amazing the sorts of patterns and shapes you get out of rings. Just rings, just a metal that you put together, and all of a sudden you get a nice fancy chain or something. It's an art form that I find quite fascinating, and one that I've not been doing too long either. Yes, it's a Yorkshire accent. I'm a born and bred Yorkshireman, as I say, and my ability to recognise accents is terrible, so I of course would say I don't have an accent. I know I do, but I don't obviously, as you probably guess, I don't hear the accent. Herefordshire is still one of the best counties. Oh, I don't know about that, Theme Hospital. I think Yorkshire's definitely the best county. And if you want to If you want to wind up a non-Yorkshireman, you just, of course, refer to Yorkshire as being God's country. Although it's like any country or any part of any country, Fear Reaper. They generally speaking, where you live is the best place, because after all, if it's not, why are you living there? But it's counties get known for different things, and they have their own sort of specialities, shall we say? So they're all different. Yorkshire is a lot. Yorkshire moors are are well known, and the hill farms around in Yorkshire. So that's one of the claims to Yorkshire fame, shall we say. Each county has their own. So we're at 10 inches there, so I've got a fair bit longer to go. I'm going to use up all of these rings, and then I will be out of rings, or out of these rings, so I'll then move on to a different chain. I don't actually know if I've got enough. Let's see. I want this to be about 16.5 inches long. So it's currently about 11.25. So I will want to add about 5.25 inches. So that's going to be there. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. I don't have enough, that's for sure. And why I didn't count in threes, I don't know. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. I've got 30. Would you believe that? At least I've got 30, which is an even number. Just proving there that Yorkshiremen can count. Yorkshire pie. Yorkshire pudding. Yorkshire pudding, Fear Reaper. Not Yorkshire pie. I had to think then. It was half familiar, that and the War of the Roses. Yes, indeed. Lancashire and Yorkshire. Of course, you've got the White Rose of Purity, and then you've got the other county. There is a, shall we say, there's a traditional rivalry between Yorkshire and Lancashire, but it's really only just in the minds of comics, shall we say. I don't think it exists in real life. I think you get more rivalry between football fans than you do between the counties these days. But I do like the county I'm in. As I say, things like the Yorkshire moors, I do enjoy being out on things like the moorlands and the hills. So there again, I was about to say I'd also kind of enjoy things like the Norfolk Broads, but the one nice thing about living in Yorkshire with all its hills, if you like, is that if you live anywhere on a hill, you're not likely to get flooded. Whereas when you live in some of the flatlands, that's a distinct possibility. And in some of the areas of North Yorkshire, things like snow become a problem, with people getting cut off sometimes in winter for long periods of time. There can be some quite harsh winters. Especially for some of the hill farmers. Sheep is a common, or was certainly a common farm. Sheep farming is relatively common in the hills of Yorkshire, so a lot of wool and a lot of woolen mills and material cotton mills in Yorkshire. A lot of textiles. If you go up towards places like Bradford and around Bradford, there was always a lot of what do you call them? Weavers, spinners, people who make cloth. I can't remember what that's called, but if you ever go and see any of these sort of industrial museums with the great big weaving looms in, they're absolutely fascinating things. Look to be as dangerous as heck, but probably wouldn't be allowed these days anywhere near them, but really fascinating things. One of the things they use on the weaving looms is, or used to use, shall we say, was something called a shuttle, which used to carry the thread from one side to the other, and it's sort of a bullet shape or double bullet shape, and it's extremely smooth and shaped, so it rides along or between the threads when they hold them apart in a loom, and apparently that thing gets or got shot across the loom anything up to about 70 or 80 miles an hour from a standing start. So you could imagine that thing would have been lethal if it came out. Is Flight GG, is York City Football Club where you are? No, I'm nowhere near York. Although of course York is the town from which Yorkshire is named. Or Ebor, I believe, to give it its founding name, for sort of Viking type times. York is also a very famous railway town, which ties in quite with the fact that I was going to do punchcraft tonight of a locomotive. It's part of the East Coast Main Line up towards Edinburgh and Glasgow. 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. A walled city as well. I don't recall if the walls still go or do go all the way around the city, but it's quite a fascinating city to visit. You do have quite a bit of the ancient walls that surround it that you can actually walk on. It does have a river going through the middle of it as well as the railway. And it has a sort of famous streets like the Shambles, which is an interesting name in itself. And of course we've got York Minster there. 3D Bloke, good evening. Oh, that's kind of a difficult question. I think all cities, there's always a reason not to visit any city, and there's always a reason to visit it. So, you know, it's 3, 6, 3, 6. So it's really hard to say. Though I don't think there's really depends on what you're after, you know. In a city. I mean, if you go up to Leeds, for example, it's quite a the Leeds itself is quite a commercial city. So if you're not interested in shopping, then you know Leeds itself isn't particularly an interesting city to be in. Whereas sort of Bradford, you've got things like the which is a sort of sister city to it. You've got things like the Film and Television Museum there, which is a sort of a famous museum. Josie Gallan 117. I could, but I'm not going to. Precisely as the hospital says, the one thing you will find on any stream is anybody who asks to be a moderator immediately disqualifies themselves from being a moderator. So you just disqualified yourself. And anyway, 3D Bloke, you've not been around for a while. How are you doing, sir? Are you feeling better? I'm losing count of what I'm doing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These get done in threes, to these large blue rings. So what I'm doing is preparing them. So they're in threes. That's why I keep counting them. So I don't open too many or close too many, which then means I've got to reverse what I've just done. Are you? You can stay if you like, Jose Galan 117. If all you came in to do was to try and be a moderator, and you're not interested in the stream, then by all means, you can disappear. You don't have to stay. Nobody's mandating it. Okay, yeah, 3D Block. Sorry about that. I would say I was aware something like that had happened, but I don't know anything else about it. So I do hope you are able to follow on from there in time. Well, if there's one incentive to put Windows on a machine, that's probably it, I suppose, isn't it? Are you dual? I assume you're dual booting it, or are you actually sticking with just the Windows? And of course now there's Windows 10 on its way. Oh, that's it depends on whether. Well, you're writing it Fear Reaper with a lowercase w. rather than an uppercase W. So effectively, you know, Macs do have windows. I think these days essentially there isn't a great deal of difference between operating systems in that respect. Excuse me, I just dropped a ring. Let's see if I can recover it. If I can find where it went. Yes, there it is. You know, there's not you know, okay, Mac is a form of Linux these days, but essentially there isn't a lot of difference between them. I mean, at one time, for example, the Macs had absolutely no concept of right clicking, which of course they do now, so there's not a lot of difference between them. OFX refuses to recognise the Ethernet card. That's clever. Have they done an update, or is it something like one of the parameters has changed and it's now doesn't, in the Ethernet card, and it doesn't recognise it anymore? Flight GG, has the cottage? Yes, it has. Would you guys like to see it? I don't mind showing it. Let me just do these few rings that I've got in my hand here, and then I shall show you what the cottage looks like. Finished it last night on stream. Oh, that's kind of reception for you, isn't it? It would be really funny, wouldn't it, if you were running, if you were doing something like running Mac on the bare metal, with Windows in a VM, putting Mac in the VM, probably running a Linux VM in that. Now that would be funny. Okay, let me just zoom the camera out. And there we go. Let's see if I can get rid of the glare. But there's the finished cottage, which I'm really rather pleased with. I love the green. The green grass make it completely, especially when it was the grass at the sides of the cottage was painted, it completely transformed it. It made a real significant difference. And I'm really rather pleased with the way it looks. Shabby Q, good evening. Welcome to the studio. I can show a few things. Well, it was, I mean, the green is something I'd never tried before. Well, given that this is only the third ever piece I've made, that's kind of not unusual, but this camera does not like certain things. Let me just take that out of the way, otherwise the camera will go mad. So the green was just something to try. I'd never tried it before, and I was doing some grass, so it seemed neat because I could use the ink straight out of the bottle. The camera will settle down a little bit. Certain things it doesn't like. It doesn't like my blue non-slip mat, for example. Okay, so I can show you a couple of other pieces. I can show you the first So that was the third scraper board that I'd ever done. I'll show you the first two. Here's the first one, if I can get rid of the glare. Let me just turn that light off for the moment. It glares too much, but that's the first ever scraper board piece that I did. That's a portrait of a gentleman called John Miles. And then we've got another one. One image I've always been fascinated with and wanted to do for myself is one called Earthrise, and scraperboard is really quite a nice medium to do that sort of image with, because it really has that space, dark colour, and you get sort of a really sort of moon grey out of it. So that's that's my version of Earthrise. Thank you, Shabby Q. John always sings with his eyes closed. Flight GG. That's why he very rarely opens his eyes while whilst he's singing. So if I had have done him with his eyes open, it would have not looked like John. If you see what I mean, it would have looked fake. Just whilst I'm in this part of the studio over here, I'll just get out something else that we did actually make on stream. I can put the light back on now. This is a quadcopter which was actually built on stream. Never actually flew it on stream, but I did show the results of flying it on stream with a video that was taken at the time. I still have to retrim this. I've not flown it since it was built. Okay, how about some carving? So carving is another art form that I do. This was the first carving that I did on stream. This is carving. It's called relief carving because it's the image is relieved from the background, and then the stream suggested it was painted, so I painted it. So that's one carving. And then we did another carving on stream, which we finished about 3 weeks ago now, which was this, which is a dragon. This is a kind of in the style of fan art of from an image that was painted by an illustrator called Michael Wheeland, of a dragon from a series of science fiction books written by Anne McCaffrey from a world called Pern that she wrote the books about, and this is of a dragon called Ruth. So who is a male dragon, by the way, and we can tell who it is because Ruth is a unique white dragon, and in Michael's illustration it's a white dragon. So that's good evening, Max out the cake. What's the hardest medium to work with in your opinion? What don't I do? That's a good question, Theme Hospital. I'll show you some other things. Hardest medium. They're all different. It's a bit like the town not to visit. They each have their challenges. I mean, for example, the scraper board that you saw me doing you saw me show a minute ago. I finished that last night, and fairly early on in the stream. And so when I did for the last part of the stream was I had a kit that had been given to me by my wife at Christmas, just as what we call a stocking filler, and I couldn't do that one. The board was a Shabby Q. Thank you very much for following. That's most kind of you. I do appreciate you doing that. Thank you. I was just saying, the scraper board that was in the kit was really cheap. It was meant to be foil rather than the white that I'm using at the moment, and I could not do it. They'd pre-printed an image over the top, but to scrape that pre-printed image off, you went right through the foil and right into the backing paper, and it looked horrible. And I was really disappointed in a way, because if somebody had got hold of that kit to try scraper board, they'd have given up. You could not get a decent image out of it, and it was the cheap material. I'm not greatly experienced, but I do have experience of doing those 3 pictures that you saw, and I could not get anything decent out of the board, and that was really disappointing. Pyrography is another thing that I do. Where's my other one gone? I'm just looking for one of my images. There it is. So I'll show you some pyrography, which is another thing we do on stream. So we've got a couple of pussycats. We've got a pussycat called Felix and a pussycat called Junior, both of whom do occasionally appear on stream. Felix here is the one that tends to sleep on the desk, pushing everything everywhere, and Junior just wants to sit on my knee when he comes up. So I can't do anything when he's around. You do painting, pottery, collage and music. I would love to be able to compose music. I can play it, sort of thing. I used to play an E-flat horn, and I can sort of play a keyboard, not very well, but I do love reproducing music. Pottery is something I'd love to kind of have a go at, but to be honest, it's a bit messy for me. I'd love to try it, but I think I'd find it too messy. I haven't. What sort of painting? I'm assuming you mean things like, do you mean watercolour or acrylic or something else? I do airbrushing, but not on stream. And I do have a Bob Ross kit to try some. I can't remember if it's acrylic or watercolour. Sorry, acrylic or oil, to be honest. Pottery is amazing. Oh yeah, I think it's amazing. Being able to lift a pot is an amazing skill. I know it's not easy. Acrylics, okay. Something I've got yet to try. I do have some canvases, and I say I don't know whether it's oil or acrylic. But anyway, these are the 2 pussycats. I've got a door hanger which has got a sleeping fox on one side and an awake fox on the other. 12 different instruments. Wow. I think I'll say that cornet, E-flat horn, not played at the same time. So, but they're the same techniques, and sort of the keyboard, but not really. In the past, I have had a go at guitar and the recorder, the sort of things you do in school, but. Oh, Flight GG. Now that's an interesting one. Glass blowing. I am absolutely fascinated by glass blowing, and there is a guy that does it. Pucky Ranger 69, I think. He's on Twitch, so keep an eye out for him in creative. He does he does glass blowing, glass moulding, just glass artwork. I find it absolutely fascinating. to watch. Whenever I come across somebody doing that in a shop, I can watch it for hours. Makes your eyes hurt, but I can watch it for hours, and it's really fascinating to watch. And I know it was Youth Theme Hospital when I said I don't do glass blowing, and well, one of these guys here immediately in chat put the word yet, but I'm not about to start glass blowing. Wood carving, yeah. Well, wood carving, I've tried. Oh, I'm trying to do. You saw the relief carving. I'm trying to do 3D carving, so sort of figurine type carving. So, but generally with a knife. But I've got the start of a sleeping cat, which I've not been doing much on for a while, to be honest. And I can't do people, so I started doing a person. Yeah, pyrography. The last pyrography piece, well, the fox actually was the last one, but we've got one here. Let me turn the light off because it's reflecting again. It's a bit hard to see, but it's a giraffe in the background with an elephant. African savannah at sunset. The piece has got called Salute to Sunset. That's the name it's picked up. So that's another pyrography piece. You can honestly make anything out of clay. That's an amazing thing. Sculpting is something I would potentially like to try at some point. But again, I'm kind of not really into the messy stuff. I'd love to be able to do it, but I'm not really into the messy stuff. I've been told oil-based clay is a bit cleaner, and there's some wax-based clay-like material that I've seen somebody using, which looks interesting in that it's less messy. I've got a couple more pyrographic pieces. I've got a practice piece here. It's a practice piece because I did it on brown board rather than white board. Because for practicing, this brown board is a lot cheaper. So I've got a Lancaster and a locomotive. I haven't finished. I must do it at some point, but it was a practice piece, so. Okay, so you form the pottery. Use the pottery to form the molds to pour the metal into. Oh, interesting. What else have I got around? I can show you some punchcraft, which is what I intended to do tonight. Now I've just started taking this one out of its mount, so it's a little bit. Let's see if I can get it in. But that same locomotive you saw, this is punchcraft. It's a bit like a miniature rug. The camera doesn't like certain colours. Let me let it autofocus and it'll stop doing that. So this is a bit like a miniature rug. You use a needle to push loops of thread from the other side through to this side. That's one of the pussycats that you can hear in the background trying to destroy my other desk. Shabby Q. It looks like a cartoon. That's not bad. You know? Don't put it down. It can get better, but fine. But come on. I've got a pussycat which wants to. He actually wants my chair. He's just, as you've just seen there, he jumped across. I'm going to persuade him to go somewhere else at the moment, so come along. Because I've got all the rings on the table. There you go, off you go. He wants to sit on my chair, but he won't share. The locomotives, the Punchcraft one, Captain Derby, or the pyrography one. No, I do understand, Shabby Q, but it's a couple of things. Sort of a tip, if you like. Never tell anybody your work is bad before they decide it for themselves. And I for example, I use this as an illustration. There is one really big mistake on there. Now, some of the guys already know this one. But there's a really big mistake on there, and I'm sure you can't see it. So, you know, I could start by telling you there's a really big mistake on there, and they therefore predispose you to think it's not really good. Whereas if you don't know it, you don't notice it. Now, I understand what you mean by your drawings, but it's a matter of you just need a little bit more time to practice. And that's, you know, a lot of drawing skills. If you've got the interest in drawing, then it's just practice. If you've no interest in it, then you probably won't practice, therefore you won't improve. But if you have the interest, then fine. Third wheel. No, the wheel's fine. What's wrong with that is you can see that with this is you can see the propellers. And that's because I was using a photograph as a reference, and I did it without thinking. And what happens when you photograph a propeller, most of the time, is you'll stop the motion. Same with video. It's why you see wheels going backwards and things like that. So if you stop a video, you'll see, you know, the propellers, and that's what I've done. Then that's the mistake. You shouldn't see them at all. They should be almost completely transparent if the engines were running. So all I do is I make up a little story which says, you know, this plane is coming into land. It's coming in for an emergency landing. The reason it's coming in for an emergency landing is they've run out of fuel. All 4 engines have stopped. There you go. That explains it. But if I hadn't told you there was a mistake, you wouldn't have known. Have I got anything else? So you've seen the punchcraft, you've seen the carving, you've seen the pyrography, you've seen the scraper board. I do have, well, I haven't done any yet, but I've got some beads. Oh, and of course the other thing is the jewellery, which I'm currently doing. So this is the one? Yeah, this is the very first thing I did. This was made from a kit. I got interested watching somebody on Twitch making jewellery from chainmail. Well, let me turn the autofocus off again now, otherwise this will have a problem. And I bought a kit, and this was the very first one I made. I enjoyed it so much that I've been making stuff ever since. What if it's parked? Yes, that's fair enough, but it's in mid-air. There's no wheels down, and it's not on the ground. So I've been making jewellery ever since. I've got another one here, and this pussycat is creeping back again. He wants this chair, but if I don't, I may sit where he is. So just making jewellery. This one's a stretchy one. I need to get some more rings, but this stretches. So there you go. That's quite an extensive tour of most of the things I've done. Gresham, no, it's just recreationally, I'm afraid. it would be nice to be able to do them professionally, but if you sort of watch the streams for any length of time, you'll notice something like that elephant took about 30 hours to do, so the equivalent of a week's work, if you like. And therefore you can kind of imagine of how much it would cost to buy something like that if you want it to make it a full-time profession. Then you'd be charging a week's worth of wage to make something like that. Now that's kind of what I would have to charge, or do charge, if you like, for commissions. But unfortunately, it bears no resemblance to what my daytime job does in terms of wages. So I unfortunately can't afford to do it as a full-time job, or at least not until I retire. Yeah, well, I fully intend actually to do something on Etsy, Shabby Q, because to be honest, doing these crafts, which I do more of now than I've done. Well, I've done more since I started streaming of these crafts than I did in about the last 3 or 4 years. Well, even longer than that. But the problem is the cost adds up to do some of these crafts. I mean, the pyrography, that A4 sheets of wood, birch plywood. To get good quality plywood, you effectively paying I don't know, something like about £5 or £6 for a sheet. That's probably about $10. Doesn't sound a lot, but you if you're going through one of those a week, that soon adds up. The scraper board, again, that's a material that adds up. These rings, these rings are something like about 5 or 6p each. So there's a fair amount of material in it. I love doing this, but it's an expensive thing to do. So yes, I do fully intend to sell on some of the things. I mean, things like the pussycats are mine. They're not going to be for sale. I'm not sure about Salute to Sunset on that one, but some of the future ones definitely. I probably will, and the jewellery, of course. I'm quite happy to sell jewellery because I can make these to order. So it's not like they're unique, like Sunset is. It's a unique piece. In fact, one of the things I might do with that is scan it and make prints available. Oops, there's it. On you go. There we go. They do and they don't pay higher prices, Shabby Q. Yes, they pay a higher price than you might find if somebody went into a store to buy something, because of course Etsy has the handmade reputation. Everything's sort of shall we say handmade, or intended for use in handmade stuff. So there is a premium to be attached to that, but you're also competing against everybody else selling stuff in Etsy. So you still have a limit on the price, shall we say. And what you do get on Etsy, as well as on in other places, is people who do it for a hobby, like I do, for example. But all they're selling it for is literally to recover material costs, perhaps, or just because they've got loads of them sitting around and they want the space back. And so, if somebody wants to sell something at a commercial rate, so that they can live, if you like, on it, it's really quite difficult for them because they're competing against the people that are just selling it for pocket money. Yeah, it's not going to pay them out. Indeed. That's the problem. It would be really nice if it did. I would certainly be really happy not to do my current job, if you like, and do this sort of thing instead. No matter which of the crafts it is. I don't think I'd like to focus on one in particular. I think I kind of like doing a variety of stuff, but which also makes it kind of a little bit harder to be commercial. But I actually am putting a website together, and I probably will make some things available to buy on there as well, and Etsy, well, as I just mentioned. You've sold some of your paintings. Yes, well, that's I'm doing this for fun. I enjoy doing this. I really no intention actually of stopping. I may have to slow down what I do, just because I can't afford to keep doing things like buying rings and things like that, just to do something with on stream. But I may start having to do. I think in pyrography, sort of fairly big complex pieces, just so they take a lot of time. It's a slight problem. And just to catch up a little bit on some of the stream. Captain Derby, the pyrographic. Yeah, okay. Sorry, sort of flitting backwards and forwards a little bit. The pyrographic locomotive. That was virtually, I think, one of the first. What did I do? I think that was virtually one of the first things I did on stream. I did that on a Saturday afternoon. I remember that. I started, and I did occasionally. Well, from time to time, I do streams on a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon UK time, where generally I'll just pick something that I feel like doing. I won't do my normal stream stuff. I'll just pick something else. To where I started doing the jewellery and the pyrography. I started there as well. What must I have been doing? I'm trying to think what art form would I have been doing? My 3D block's still around. I know you saw one of my first streams free. What was the first thing I did? Because 3D block actually is an airbrush artist, and he's on Twitch, and we'll probably start streaming again at some point. But he actually, shall we say, I'll say inspired, but probably dared is more likely thing to start streaming. So made me promise at start, so I did. I'm now trying to remember what I started by doing. Pyrography, carving. It must have been the pyrography I started with. It seems such a long time ago now, but it was only back in April. That I actually started streaming, and apart from a short 2 weeks while I was on holiday, I've streamed every day since. I've got a couple of, yeah, I'll need some more pink to open some more pink rings in a moment, but we'll just put this last pair of pink rings on. I was doing this ergonomically. I put the blue things over here so that I can pick them up with my left hand rather than reaching across, but time and motion, you see. I was about to say it's taken 2 hours so far, almost 2 hours so far to extend this, but there was rather an extended break in the middle where I was doing an art show. Oh! Mm. Can I find that ring? Oh, I can. Excuse me. People quite often ask how I've got the patience to do things like the carving or the pyrography or even, you know, the ring stuff. And my usual answer is that I don't have patience for it. I don't need patience. Patience is something that you tend to need when something isn't going how you want it to go. The sort of thing is like there, where I dropped this because it just slipped out of the pliers. It went on the floor. The ring went on, the open ring went on the floor. I had to find it, and that's when you need patience. And in fact, whilst I really enjoy doing this chain work, doing it is there are times when I've been doing it where I've got the absolute closest to rage quitting on anything. I'm learning to calm that down a little bit, but it'll be things like where you're just trying to get this ring to go through a space, a hole here. Actually, I'll zoom back in a bit. If I can persuade this pussycat not to sleep on my mouse. Thank you. There we go. And it just won't quite go where I want it to go. I'll get really irritated by it or really sort of wound up. And it takes it. That's when you need patience. Otherwise, most of the time, I don't need it at all. That's the only problem with building a PC 3D is all the installing and then the updates and then the installing and then the... Yeah. I know at some point in the next year or two I'm probably going to need to or want to build a new PC. Although the one I've got is probably will be fine. I just need potentially just need a new graphics card in it to bring it up to date. It being a 2.4 gig i7, but it's starting from scratch and installing all the applications. Pyrography, yeah. Oh yeah, yes, it is a pity, isn't it? You can get some really nice pictures from lightning storms. Who was it? Was it you, Fear Reaper, that was doing a at one not so long ago? Did a render of a lightning strike? Or no, it wasn't a lightning strike. It was a Pokemon, I think, wasn't it? With lightning in the background. I'm not sure if it was you, Fear Reaper, or someone else. But being able to do that, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I want 10 rings. To finish this off, I think. Time goes a lot quicker when you're doing this than you think. You'd think it would, and it does, relatively speaking, grow quite quickly. But you kind of, I know lots of people that I've talked to about, like at work, where I've talked to about jewellery making, like this, with the rings. They all kind of expect it to sort of just take about 10 minutes to make a chain like this, or even some of the simpler chains. And yet, you know, a necklace can take something like about 2 hours to produce. But whilst you're doing it, time just vanishes. 2, 4, 6, 8. I think I said I needed 10, so I've got one extra. Time just vanishes. It's amazing how you get absorbed in what you're doing. And whilst I'm streaming, of course, I'm talking to you guys as well. The time really does disappear really rather quickly. Let's put that over there. In fact, let me move those blue rings all over there. Let me do what I said I should do. And I'll try and keep this on camera as well. And that's the only problem is us creative people have a problem with camera work, which gamers don't have. So we're always having to adjust camera or lighting to make it easier, and we're not careful, we end up moving out of frame. And it's always a challenge is the camera work. So not only do we have to be experts at whatever craft we're doing, but we also have to be camera and lighting experts. Big Peak, I think you just missed the maybe you just missed the bit where I said actually I don't. I can appreciate the thought, but stamina maybe, or the desire to do something, but not specifically patience. I and quite a few other people that have sort of discussed it will almost certainly say to you that it doesn't actually require patience to do something like this. Patience is something that you need when something isn't going right. So when you know, if I'm trying to put this through here and I keep dropping the ring and have to pick it up, or it won't quite go where I want it to go, or the rings keep getting in a bunch, or don't quite sit correctly, that's when patience is needed. That's when you're getting you can feel your emotions getting to the point of rage quitting. For me, I start curling my toes. Yeah. Oh, it's all right. I mean, I wasn't criticising you or anything there, Big Peak. It is something that a lot of people do say. You must need a lot of patience to do this, and as I mentioned, it's not really. But as you say, it's you have to enjoy it, shall we say, to want to spend 2 hours doing it. But there again, any hobby is the same. If you play computer games, for example, I could almost say the same thing. You must need a lot of patience to want to play a computer game for a couple of hours at a time. Oh, I do love it, yes, but let me, as I just said, let me ask you the question. If you do play computer games, it's exactly the same question. Do you get bored playing with them? And if not, why not? I kind of I'm putting rings on rings. You're pushing buttons on a control. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it or anything like that. It's just it's a comparison which you perhaps hadn't thought of. Nearly. This nearly slipped out from the pliers, and if it had done, that would have sent my rage indicator up a little bit. That's the patience bit where I then felt, I felt my stomach clench a little bit, and I knew I needed to just calm down a bit. Yes, although hopefully we get a nice set of people in like we have tonight with you guys. There isn't a lot of moderating needed, but I've got to keep checking the output monitors. I've got to keep making sure the stream is still live. Keep looking at the time for a start, because I don't want to be going on while past midnight or anything like that. And of course, interacting with you guys, which is an important part of the stream and one I enjoy as well. It makes doing any of this stuff a lot more interesting when there's not only when there's people watching, but also interacting. Either just chatting about something or asking questions or anything like that. It sort of makes the stream a heck of a lot more interesting. I've got a ring which is just slightly off. I want to just close it up a little bit. I really try and make sure these rings are closed really smoothly. It makes it a lot nicer to look at, and things basically move a little bit smoother as well. Right. Actually, doing rings like this, sometimes you wish you'd about 6 pairs of hands, or at least 6 hands. It can, well, in a way, certainly it can do big peak. It has sort of similar characteristics sometimes. It's like just one more ring. Okay, potentially it's not bad, because if I'm making a bracelet, it's a particular length, and I've got to stop at the end of it. If I want to carry on, I have to make another one. It's not like I'm just making a chain just for the sake of it. But there is just sort of, I just want to finish. If it gets light to the stream, we're nearly at the end of the stream now, and I kind of will be. I'll just finish, and it might take 10-15 minutes more to just finish, and yet I'll want to do that. Rather than stop with 4 rings left to do or something like that. And even if I wasn't broadcasting, it'd be exactly the same thing. I've just got 4 rings. I'm going to stay up, or whatever. I'll leave my tea for a little bit longer, before I eat it, just to finish off the 4 rings. So there is a little bit of that, but I'm sure it's the same. Whatever somebody enjoys. Sometimes I was just reluctant to put it down. I know certainly I've been that way with some games in the past. I've just wanted to carry on playing the game until I finished it, and I've been up at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, playing a game to finish it off, and then had to go to work the next morning. You can also get ultimately get bored with doing things as well. It's one of the reasons why I like doing a lot of different crafts, because it gives me a chance to do something different for a while. The Salute to Sunset, the elephant, that took something like 30 plus hours, so that was about 3 weeks of streaming. Actually, possibly a little bit more than that, because whilst I'm talking, I tend not to want to wave a hot pyrographic tool around, so I tend to stop whilst I'm talking, so it probably took longer than that. And I know towards the end of doing that, it was kind of like, if I wasn't within sort of half an hour finishing it, I would have just put it to one side for a couple of weeks and come back to it to finish it, and I could have moved on to something else for a while, because it was getting to the point where I just had enough for a while. So perhaps one reason why I wouldn't actually be able to sort of just do pyrography, for example, as a career. I'd have to do something else as well, just to add in a little bit of variety. Andrew Word 2108, draw a class 91 in East Coast livery. I'm trying to remember what a class 91 looks like. The class 90 is what used to be known as the Intercity 225, I think, isn't it? I don't know what the class 91's like. I could do, but I'm not about to do it now. I haven't done any drawing on stream yet. I might consider it in the future to do in one of the art forms. The punchcraft, for example, I may well do. Now that's a colour form, so I could do a colour representation of the East Coast livery in that, but of course things like pyrography is monochrome, so you'd only get sort of the shapes of the livery, not the actual colours of the livery. Let me let you into a secret, Andrew Word. 2010-8. I don't know what the classes are, so I know a few of them. The class 66, for example, because I've done it, or an A4, and I think if I remember rightly, I know what the class 56 looks like, but I don't necessarily know what a class 37 is, but I do know what BRS is. DRS is, Direct Rail Services. That's the blue livery, isn't it, if I remember correctly? Now let me see how long this is. So I've got a long way. Turning this into a necklace, so it needs to be about 16 inches, 17 inches long, something like that. Ooh! Ooh! Now then. Now then. This is now 15 and almost 15.5 inches long with a barb on the end. It needs to be about 16.5 in order to sort of is about the minimum size of a necklace, otherwise you're into a choker. I'm going to cheat because I've got no more blue rings, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an extender on it. Now what that is just a, generally speaking, just a different chain like this one. These pink rings which I've been using to as part of the weave, what I'm going to do is make a what's called a simple 2-in-2 chain, which is actually what's on this end here. So I'm just going to make a simple 2-in-2 chain for the end. Big peak. Good. I was going to say good evening. Thank you very much for following. That's absolutely fantastic of you. I do appreciate you doing that, and thank you very much. And Gresham, also thank you very much for following. That is most kind of you. That's great. Thank you very much. So yes, I'm just going to make a simple 2-in-2 chain to go on the end, and then just sort of about three maybe 4 links should be enough to add the extra length that's needed. It won't look out of place either, because on a necklace it'll be round the back of the neck, of course, and as I mentioned, quite a lot of necklaces often do have a thin chain at the back rather than the full whatever the necklace is, so it's not one that will look out of place. So you may actually, well, you will actually see this finished. I did think I'd be, I did think I needed about another 6 blue rings in order to make it long enough. Now that's probably strictly true, because I was probably aiming for something like a 17-inch, 17.5-inch for the person that wants this, but 16.5 may well be okay. Now then, before I do that, let me close a couple of these, which will make life a little bit easier. No problem, Andy, I will do that. Class 313s, I have no idea what they are, Theme Hospital, and why do you have to use them? Are you just intending to represent 2 eyes, or reference to the Illuminati, Andrew? Or Andy, rather? So Andy, do you, since you're obviously very interested in the trains there, do you play Train Simulator? Normally normally when I finish the stream I'll go watch Matt Pendleton playing Train Simulator, but on a Friday he started doing Flight Simulator, which I'm not as interested in, shall we say. So I'm not going to be watching him tonight. Okay, one final ring. I think this will do for a length, so I'll put the clasp on the end of it, which I know has got another couple of rings, so actually I better check which they're the right way. Okay, sort of rambling a little bit there to myself, kind of talking to myself. Occasionally do that, and sometimes I'll even talk to the materials. I'm about to put this clasp on the end, but I have to put it on the right way. And by the right way, what I mean is this necklace being very wide, wants to sit flat on the neck, like that. Okay, so when I get to the clasp on the end, I want the clasp to sit flat as well. Now, if I don't make sure that there are the correct number of rings, because they're at right angles to each other, it will tend to want to sit like that, which will look both untidy and possibly uncomfortable. So I need to make sure that these rings sort of go, because they go alternate. And if I stretch them out, I'll show you. Okay. So if I stretch this out, you can see they're at 90 degrees to each other: vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal. And I want this to be horizontal like that, so I've got to put a pair of vertical rings through them, which, as it happens, is what I've got, a pair of rings to go vertical through them. So nice and convenient that everything lines up, but it is important with clasps to make sure that that happens. Now, some clasps are less, a magnetic clasp, for example, doesn't make any difference whatsoever because it's symmetrical all the way around, it's round. But things like this, or lobster claw clasps, to look right, they have to be lined up like I've just done, and that sometimes means you have to put like an extra pair of rings in, or adjust the design slightly in order to make sure that it does. Okay, so there we go. You've just seen the end of a necklace made, or a what was a bracelet turned into a necklace. It's a little bit stiff for a bracelet. It hasn't quite got the bend radius that you need for a bracelet, or it tends to go all sort of horrible like that. But hopefully, as a necklace, it's got enough flex to work as a necklace. Let me just zoom this out again, because now that I'm showing all of it, so as a necklace, it should bend enough to go around the neck without sort of going all sort of weird looking. Okay. Maybe I'll have to have a look and see what a class 313 actually looks like, Theme Hospital. Interestingly, this has got a twist in it. Don't quite know why. I'm feeling this necklace here, and it's wanting to twist in sort of an unscrewing direction. I don't quite know why. It's possibly just the way a ring is set, or maybe they are. What it is, I think, is there's a few. I've just lost it. Where is it? What I'll have to do is just go through, there it is, and check a few of these rings, like this one I've got here. It's slightly not quite closed properly, and that will actually force it to twist in the direction that I mentioned. So maybe that's why it's got a slight twist on it. I did close them properly at the time because I checked them all, but what happens is the material has like a slight memory, and which is one reason if you watch when I'm doing this with a ring, I'll twist it past, back and forward a couple of times before I set it in position. What that does is two things: it work hardens it a little bit, but it also resets the memory for where it wants to be. If I don't quite do it enough, and occasionally I don't, what happens is the ring sort of relaxes back a little bit into the position, towards the position it had when it was made, and so that's why there's a minor twist in this. So I'll probably just have to go through and just check them all. There'll be one or two which have just relaxed slightly. Most of the time it doesn't make any difference, but just occasionally on something like this, which is highly reliant on the rings being in quite close proximity to each other here that hold them flat, then it has a small impact, shall we say. That one is off slightly. You can see it sometimes as well, because there's like a, I'm not sure you will see it, but I can see it here. It's like a little silver flash. There we go, and that one's straight again. Okay, thanks for that, Fear Reaper. So, anyway, there we go. An impromptu bit of jewellery making, because the intention was to do punchcraft, which hopefully I'll be doing tomorrow, with an A4 Pacific locomotive, which will sort of be loosely mallard, but it's just an A4 really. In punchcraft I should hopefully get that prepared in order to be able to do that tomorrow night, so that's what we'll be doing then. But for now we've got a finished necklace, which we'll go see now whether it works or not. I'll go try it on a model. Just before I go, I will show you the pussycat, who's been here now, laid there for a fair bit of the stream. That's the model for one of the pyrographic pieces. Have I got it still here? I have. So that pussycat is that pussycat. Yeah, so he's somewhat chiller. He actually wants my chair. That's why he's here. He wants the chair I'm sitting in, and because he can't have it, he's sitting there, and you might notice he's pushing the keyboard off, and my glasses are getting pushed off, and all sorts of things. Punchcraft Big Pete is Big Peak, sorry, is a this is what it looks like when it's done. It's a bit like a miniature rug making. What it is use a needle to work from the other side, so this is the front, but you work from the back, to push a thread through to form a loop, which is how rugs are made. Sorry, Big Pete. Big Peak. I do not understand that sentence. Oh, about the pussycat. Yeah, he won't share the chair, so. Oh, there you go. Then maybe you ought to try it again, Big Peak. I find it quite fun. That is one I do find therapeutic to do, because you're punching holes. Oh yeah, that was what the cat thought. No, I don't know. It's he if you're familiar with cats, they always seem to have a favourite place where they'll keep going back for a while, and his at the moment is my chair. And if he can't have my chair, he'll sit generally round about there. Although interestingly, he sort of, for about the past week, he's been sort of interested in just being on the desk. I know he's after the chair. If I get up and go away, he'll come and sit in the chair. But he has sort of, shall we say, kept company. for about the past couple of weeks, so maybe it's the hot weather or something. He just wants a bit of companionship. We've got 2 other cats, but they are sort of independent, shall we say. Anyway, guys. Oh, you have 2? Ah. Do they get on with each other? Because ours don't do too bad, but the female is in charge. Yeah, that's right. They always do. My wife says they soak up the energy from whatever it is that you're doing. But you're right. Whatever it is you're doing, they want to sit there. He's not so bad. He doesn't tend to want. Neither of them really want to sort of sit here where I'm doing stuff, which you've been watching me all night. But Felix there does have a habit, for example, of putting his head on the keyboard and just resting his chin on it. But that's obviously is enough to press every key going. They fight occasionally. One does not allow the other one in the living room. Yeah, territorial. The one of our Junior, who's the other male cat, because we've got 2 male, 1 female. Junior, who's the other male cat, he was a feral cat, and he is a big chunky cat. And the female cat is now an old lady, and she's quite small, and I'll say frail, but she's quite a thin old cat, and she'll put him in his place quite happily. She'll just turn and hiss at him, and he'll sit back. And he's a cat that at one time would quite happily bite me or my wife, being a feral cat, but he won't tangle with the female at all. She rules it. But the interesting thing is, she kind of is jealous. Whenever you find somewhere to lay, she's jealous. She'll go lay there when he's not there, and so she ends up following him around the room. But anyway, they are fun and interesting animals to have around. Unfortunately, guys, unfortunately, it's now 20 past 10 in the UK. It's past the end of the stream now, and I have finished the necklace, so that's a good point to stop for this evening. I want to say thank you all for dropping in and watching. It has been absolutely fantastic having you all around. Those of you that have followed, thank you very much. And if there's anybody that's watching and isn't following, I do of course encourage you to do so. If you would just like to be notified when I go live and don't quite believe that Twitch will do that for you, then you can follow me on Twitter. I tweet when I go live, not when I have my lunch. Details will be on the end plate, but also below the stream window, and it's at Zaraganard anyway. And if you just want to catch me again, then I'll be on stream tomorrow night from approximately 8 PM UK time, 1900 hours GMT, or 2 hours and 20 minutes ago in whatever time zone you're in. That was 8 o'clock UK time. And it'll be that tomorrow evening. I may stream tomorrow afternoon, I'm not sure yet, depends on weather and everything else, and if I do, I'm not sure what I'll be doing, but you're welcome to drop in. Big Pete, sorry, I keep calling you Big Pete. Big Peak, you're in Holland, so yes, you're an hour ahead. I was talking to somebody in Holland today. I work with somebody who lives in Holland. So you've got to get to sleep. Seems like a good idea, to be honest. I should do the same myself. Gresham, thank you very much. Have a good evening. Fear Reaper, good night. Thank you, everybody. See you again later. Bye-bye.